higher starting storage again, 256, and a higher starting price, $999 starting price for the 11-inch, $1,299 for the 13-inch. Is a $200 price increase.
Yeah. This was our tiebreaker in the draft where I made you pick above or below 950.
Yeah.
And you picked below.
But it went way above.
I thought, this is what I thought. I thought that it would be $999 for the base model this time instead of for the big model. So yeah, $1,299. So as I was flying out here, I was thinking back to when I was flying back from the Brooklyn event and writing about the 2018 launch of the iPad Pro.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wrote this piece on 6 Colors about like the future of the iPad Pro. And I mentioned again that I think that, macOS is Apple's kind of secret weapon at this point, and that like they should put macOS on an iPad Pro. They should put macOS in Vision OS as an option. I think like the Mac is such a powerful thing, and it's sort of like it's no longer the dead end, and it's the future. It is the present and future of computing, and the iPad is no longer the future of computing, but something else. And I still feel that way. And the reason that I was motivated to say that, and Apple didn't do that today. I'm not surprised. Didn't really expect them to, but the reason I say that is Apple needs to give people a lot of reasons to buy an iPad Pro instead of an iPad Air. That's to me, that's the thing. And the $1,000 for an 11, $1,299, $1,300 for a 13, and then if you want a keyboard, it's an extra $300. It adds up real quick, and that's fine if you can get value out of it. And I think that Apple today made some good arguments about some of the things that the iPad Pro is great at. It talked about photography. It talked about design. It talked about illustration a whole lot, and some 3D work that you can do in it, and a lot of sort of like creative things you can do with an iPad. And okay, I'll give them those, especially with the Apple Pencil. I'll give them those. My challenge is that strikes me as being a pretty small slice. And that while they talk about this keyboard, right, and they're like, oh, look at this keyboard, and there's a guy on the BART train, and he's working on numbers. It's like, okay, but the truth is that I need more reason to buy an iPad Pro over an iPad Air. And right now what you got is OLED, Face ID, and processor power. But really, and ProMotion, right? But really, like, is it compelling enough for a large enough slice, or is that slice a little too small still? Because one of my reactions when I was watching this thing, and it was, I have fun. It's a wild ride watching Apple videos, and I had fun watching it all. But I had that moment where they pivoted from the M4 and all the things that are in the M4 that enable the iPad. They pivoted from that to iPadOS, right?
Yep.
And I could feel my soul leaving my body, because the fact is, I still believe that, just as it was the case in 2018, Apple is so good at building amazing hardware. That screen, that processor, like, it's amazing. Who could deny it? The power and performance, the battery life, like all of those things. This product is amazing. And then we get to iPadOS, and it's sort of like, and I'm not an iPadOS hater, but like, it is like, it cannot compare to the hardware work that Apple's doing right now. And if Apple fancies itself that its secret sauce is the fusion of hardware and software working together, the story of the iPad for the last 6 years, if not longer, is that the software lets down the hardware.
Yeah.
And while the software has gotten better, the hardware has gotten a lot better. And I look at this today and I think there are specific applications that like not apps, like use cases applications that are really remarkable, and Apple knows it, and Apple is calling all of those out. But I keep thinking about how this doesn't really change the conversation, where there's a lot of capabilities in iPadOS, but we all know that there's a whole lot of things that iPadOS just can't do. And so now you've got the power of an M4 processor inside that thing. And like, yeah, you can pay $1,200 for one, and it'll be a beautiful movie player. It'll be really expensive, but it'll be a beautiful movie player. You won't be using most of its features, but it will be a beautiful player because of the OLED screen. But like, and I'm not saying it's iPadOS is an F. I'm saying the hardware is an A. And iPadOS is a, I don't know, C, B, B minus. For some things, it's good. For other things, it's still what it is, which is kind of like, there's a bunch of stuff it can't do, and it probably will never be able to do, and it still frustrates me. So I had that moment. That was my moment of sort of sourness in this, is that after that real high of the hardware and the fact that they're still kicking on this, and they've got the tandem OLED, and they've got the M4 out of nowhere with all this stuff in it, and they're like, and now let's talk about iPadOS. And I was like, well, I can see how this is going to go. And it's, I mean, yeah, there's a new version of Final Cut and Logic, and there are some nice features that will also be in the Mac version, but I don't know. It was a letdown. Not that I was expecting some kind of amazing iPadOS story. In fact, if they're going to have that story, they should have it at WWDC next month anyway. But like, it was just a reminder to me of the contrast. Not even saying that iPadOS is bad, just saying that like Apple is at the top of its game, and maybe the game, on the hardware side of these products. And then on the software side, you're like, oh yeah, it's the same old story. It's just kind of, it's okay. It's got some stuff it doesn't do, some stuff it does do. It's kind of a big iPad or a big iPhone, a little bit still. I don't know. I don't know what you thought about it, but it was a real, I actually put it in my notes. I'm like, oh, the letdown right here. I felt it.
I mean, I understand it, right? Federico turned to me at the end. He's like, what do you think? Like, what did you think about all of that? And basically, it's like, I got exactly what I thought we were going to get. Like, I share the desire for Mac virtualization, but I don't really expect we're going to get it. Like, I don't expect it.
And I don't want to go overboard about Mac virtualization, because Mac virtualization in many ways is my attempt to find a solution to the problem of the iPad. Because the problem of the iPad is, at one point it seemed like they were going to drive it toward being the replacement for the Mac.
Sure.
And then at some point they sort of like, they struggled with it, and they didn't really get it there, and then they seemed to stop trying and decided that the Mac is the future of the Mac. But like, they don't have a convertible, and the iPad Pro does some things well, and there are other things that it just doesn't do. And, you know, I would be fine if they said, we're reinvigorating iPad OS in order to do all these things because we don't want it to have the limitations it's got. But instead, it feels like they're in this position where they're like, the Mac's over there, and it can do anything you want, and the iPad's over here, and it's never really going to do more than it does right now. And so when I bring up something like virtualizing Mac OS when you're in a keyboard and trackpad case in order to just sort of use it as a laptop for a while, it is in some ways an act of desperation, but it's also me trying to find a solution that unlocks the power of that hardware, because iPadOS doesn't do it.
You know, you're saying about the future of computing, and it seemed like it was going down that track, and then they changed course. I actually wonder if I don't know if the iPad changed course. I think that the Apple that was potentially moving towards getting rid of the Mac and replacing it with the iPad maybe wanted the iPad to be like just what it is. Like that.
Well, I mean, they may have decided that
down, and
it felt though like at one point there was like a real project of, we're going to push a lot of extra features into iPadOS because we want it to be more Mac-like, because in the end the Mac is going to kind of fade away. And when they realized with Apple Silicon, and I think they decided they were going to not just keep the Mac around as a legacy product, but they were going to put it on Apple Silicon, and they're going to make the effort to take the underpinnings and get them connected between Mac OS and iOS and iPadOS so that they're all running the same base system and all of that. They decided to do that. I feel like what probably happened is that the pressure went off iPadOS. It's like, oh, you don't have to be more Mac-like now. It's fine.
Yeah. I mean, like, for me as a user, this is what I expected, and so I got what I wanted.
Well,
I
this
would
is
love
exactly,
to see,
I think, what we all expected, other than the M4, which is more than we expected, in fact.
But I mean, the M4 is still emblematic of what I expect, which is the iPad's incredibly powerful, and I'm not going to use any of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But and this brings back me to my point about, like, I'm not actually criticizing when I write these articles and stuff. I'm not actually criticizing the iPad. I'm criticizing the existence of the iPad Pro, because I don't think for most use cases it makes any sense.
Sure.
Because there are a lot of Pro use cases out there where Pro users might want a convertible, but iPadOS can't do it for them. So you're left with this narrow slice of creative cases where it's the Apple Pencil and it's 3D rendering. And even Apple struggles a little bit to be like, what's a creative use that also requires the power of an M4 processor? And as the iPad Air gets better and is a lot cheaper, I feel like I have to have that question, which is like, okay, I love the iPad. I think the iPad Air is really good. What are the things that justify the existence of the iPad Pro and justify its price? And that's where I just start to struggle a little bit, because Apple has built it. They built it, right? They built the amazing machine, but now, like, to what end? And sometimes I get frustrated because I feel like there is no what end there. It just, we've built a huge monument to our
AI is going to save the day.
AI is going to do. Yeah, it's going to be. You're going to need it for all the AI that you're going to be doing. Okay,
so
all right,
AI.
fine, fair.
I do want to talk about real quick an actual real incredible Pro use case that I saw today, which was the Final Cut Pro 2 and the Final Cut camera app with multi-view.
Yes.
So I got to see a demo of them actually. Like, they set up a bunch of cameras and they were doing like here's a product walkthrough, and the product manager was showing us how it worked, and it was really very impressive. They had like these
3 iPhones.
Yeah, 3 or 4 iPhones, and then they
an
had
iPad.
the iPad, which was bringing in. It was like getting all of the files. They were like streaming to it and as reference files, and you're able to multicam, like edit, like do a very quick edit. But you can also change all of the settings of all of the cameras wirelessly and independently of each other.
So they built this camera app. To run on the iPhone or the iPad, and it will work in standalone mode. It's kind of like the Blackmagic camera or one of those apps. It's like it's got a lot of advanced features for capturing video, but one of the killer features is if you're attached to an iPad running Final Cut, you can remote control those cameras. So they had one that was mounted. I assume this is the case for you too. That was mounted like high up, looking down on the table. So you can't control that iPhone from up there, but it can control it remotely. And then the previews are being streamed live over, I think it's an ad hoc Wi-Fi connection, and they're lower resolution, but they're streaming resolution. And then you can start shooting, and you can multicam that way, and you can adjust them even on the fly. You can change the focus. You can do all those things, and then at the end, when you're done, it's a little like those podcast and video apps where they catch up at the end. Like, when you're done, those apps will continue streaming the full quality video to the iPad, so that in the end, the iPad can walk away with the whole project, which is also smart, right? Like, so there's a proxy that is the low quality streamed version, and then it backfills it with the full quality version. And puts that in the project, which is super clever and super smart. And I also, one of the people in our group asked about Apple IDs, because they're like, do these all have to be on the same Apple ID? And the person said, no, because you probably don't want to buy 4 iPhones. You're probably bringing a bunch of people's iPhones, and that's fine, because you can do an authentication thing where you basically say, trust this iPhone, and you say yes, and then they talk to each other, and you can have multicam that way. It's very clever.
Really cool.
Very clever. And this is, I believe, a feature that's not going to be on Final Cut Pro for the Mac, because they're doing most of the Logic and Final Cut features that they announced are coming to updates to the Mac versions as well. But I think this particular one is iPad only.
Yeah, but I thought that was like, I looked, I was like, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's smart.
These iPads are available next Wednesday, which is a very weird day to me. Wednesday. So you can order them now, and they ship on Wednesday. It's like, okay, Wednesday. Usually these things are Fridays, right? Like, just it's the middle of next week you can get them.
Yeah, they just said next week on the slides, and
yes,
and
15th
I was sitting
of May.
behind a couple of product reviewers who looked at each other and swore, and I laughed because
it's even
like,
worse, because this was the thing where like Federico's
Wednesday.
like, okay, next Friday. It's like, no, next Wednesday is when they're they're available to the
Yeah.
public.